So we've been working for a couple of days. We got quite a bit of information here. We're going to go through kind of the process that we've gone through. I think everybody here is familiar. I don't see any new faces. So everybody's familiar with the previous meetings and what we've been doing. Our goals for success are on the board over there. We have been working on the program of spaces over the last 2 weeks. We had about 40,000 square feet 2 weeks ago. Right now we're about 35,000 square feet. So we've done some refinement and found some efficiencies. Also under the white goose over there is kind of a ideal layout for the courts, specifically for Mitchell County. It's got the courts and all the support spaces with it. You see some blue coloring and some orange and some yellow. That's circulation. The blue is really the judge's circulation. And that's the judge's chambers and court reporter spaces back there. The orange is really prisoner circulation. And yellow is public circulation. So we've used those same colors in the circulation schemes on the concepts of it as they've been developed. So yesterday morning, the first thing we did was we identified actually about a dozen different site layouts that were potential site layouts. 1 through 5 on the far side are concepts where we retain the existing courthouse structure. And 6 through 10 are concepts where we build a new courthouse and don't use the existing courthouse. One of them, number 6, actually keeps the courthouse but doesn't utilize it for the same kind of spaces. Then that morning we got our comments, and at noon, the sheets that are laying here, most of those comments came that morning or noon or early afternoon. We narrowed the list to number 2, 4, 5, 7, and 10. And as it was asked last time, we've got our chart for the options. We were asked to study A, C, and F. So we've got one option for F, 2 for A, and 2 for C. So in the afternoon, we did the site concepts that run across the top here. And then had a meeting with just a few people, but with that group, we identified some efficiencies, and we actually only eliminated one concept from that study, and that was 5, because 4 and 5 are very similar, and the feeling was a consensus of the group that number 4 had less impact on the existing structure. So we were asked to study that one a little bit more. And then this morning we developed more refined floor plan layouts at about twice the scale, which meant we needed to put a lot more detail into it. All the little spaces, in addition to the big departmental spaces. And then this afternoon we started to look at what it might look like on the outside, so you can see what it is we're really talking about. And there are variations on each one. So F happens to be the one that I worked on, so I'm going to talk about it a little bit, and then we'll have some of the other team members talk about the others. So concept F, there's 2 different concepts here that were initially developed. One is a 2-story addition with a basement. And you can see this is the existing courthouse, existing jail, and then this is the addition. 2nd floor, and then the lower level. There's a basement under maybe about 1/3 of the building zone. With this addition, it pushed out far enough that we had to move the parking over to the side. So that kind of impacted the site. This concept had a basement under it. So it's 1st floor, 2nd floor, plus a basement. The basement was pretty large. In this case, to keep the footprint as small as possible, we had to move some of the departments downstairs. County supervisors, in this case we had the recorder, some other spaces, IT and things. And the desire was to not put some of those spaces down in the basement. So we focused on F1 and developed variations on the plan layout. And in a goal to work out the court space a little bit better, we spent quite a bit of time on that. The courts are on the second floor in this case, and again, this is the jail. And here's the existing courthouse. All these spaces in this block are essentially the court spaces. Clerk of court, magistrate courtroom, district courtroom. These are public restrooms, actually. Jury space, and then judge and court reporter spaces. This is the main entrance point. Across the hall from the courts area is the assessor. Then back inside the existing building are some of the support spaces for courts, economic development space, county supervisor's boardroom, workroom, conference room, and office space. And then on the first floor, the main entrance is located basically off of this parking lot, and most of the county spaces are here. So auditor, treasurer spaces, recorder, there's IT, deputy auditor, veterans, office, planning and zoning are all located inside the existing piece. And then this is kind of shows the massing of what the building would look like, connecting the two. And of course, the jail is a one-story structure, but there is a gymnasium, kind of day room space that's much taller. It's twice the size of the rest of the building, and it's connected right here. And we're kind of tying into that. So that's this block right there. This is the existing courthouse. And then this is what the addition would look like. That side, there are no windows in the first floor because it's primarily storage and a secure corridor that takes you from the jail over to the elevator up into the secure area. So it's really no windows on the first floor, and the second floor does have windows. So that's really the north side, kind of the main existing courthouse side. And then the south side has a similar type of porch on it. This is the wing of the existing courthouse. And then this is the space in between. That's a stairwell. And one treatment was maybe this could be a wall of glass to make it more contemporary, because we heard the desire to kind of pay homage to the historic, but also look to the future with the courthouse too. It could look similar to that, but in this case it gives an option so people can weigh in on that. And because this is connecting two buildings, we thought it was important to do a work plan. You can kind of visualize, what is the massing, what does it look like? Because it's always complex when you're combining two buildings. So again, that's the courthouse. The main entrance piece is really just an extension of that gable. Another little opportunity for this entrance, and it really continues that central corridor all the way through. So there's an entrance point on both sides. Obviously, most people will probably use that because the parking is here. And then this is the main court section that has a hip roof over it. It gets lower on this side with the one-story building, and then here's that tall piece. So that's that one. Any questions on that concept before we move on to the next one?
What do you mean by circulation in the courts? The blue, are there different elevators in those three places?
There are, and in this case, the public circulation is separated from the prisoner circulation and the judge circulation. There is some overlap because the timing of that can be controlled. So, public elevator and stair is right here at this lobby entrance. So at different times of the day, different spaces could be closed off or opened up with secure doors. So there is separate circulation, basically public-private.
How many elevators?
There are two elevators in this concept.
And where's the other one?
The red squares, there's one here and one here. So this is that central circulation. Again, that you'll see that orange box in the middle is that vertical circulation. that takes you from the secure corridor, right there to the elevator, and up in between the two courtrooms. Okay, other questions?
What is the present south side of the old courthouse? You go in there and you have to go up about 6, 7 steps to get up to the level of the old courthouse.
The
How
courthouse,
does this,
the courthouse floor, the old courthouse floor is raised up above the ground several feet. That's correct.
and that
So-
would continue?
Yeah, the concept here is that all the floor lines match, and that's why in this concept there are stairs and there are 2 ramps that can bring you up on the sides.
Okay.
Yes?
Well, one of the ideas that was brought up at the last meeting, or a question, with the use of courts that we have in our county, could the magistrate and the district court use the same courtroom?
That's probably a question for our court administrator to respond to. Can you respond to that?
I can. Courts feel pretty strongly to need 2 courtrooms. We need one we can have a jury in, bigger courtroom, pick a jury. Granted, we don't have a lot of juries, but we do have them. And we need another non-jury or equity courtroom that could be used for magistrate court, juvenile court, or any non-jury civil cases, dissolution of marriage, all those types of things.
Scott, are you familiar with the section of the code that talks about local funding for the courts?
Yes.
Yeah. So, you know, I mean...
That's what we think we need. It's up to the board to decide that.
Yeah. Because, 602.1303,
Yep.
I think,
Yeah.
says the judgment of the supervisor.
Yeah, we can't order anything. We're at the mercy of the board of supervisors. We realize that. We're just telling you what we think we need.
Scott, you oversee 22 counties?
Correct.
Second division district, A and B.
What's that?
I just said I'm familiar with
Correct.
the 2.
Okay.
I'm not that this matters, but I'm not aware of any courthouse in the state of Iowa that only has 1 courtroom. I'd be very shocked if that exists. It would result in conflicts, and you know, if you've got a custody case going on and you can't go your second day of your custody case because there's another trial, it would be very unfortunate.
Okay, the next concept then is, Ray or Ed? Ed, do you want to come up and talk about this one? Or both of you? Why don't you both come up? So this one is the existing building and adding a new structure to it and minimizing the impact as much as possible.
Okay, we went through the same process that Denny described. We started out with a site plan, and the difference between the 4 and the 5 was how close we could get the addition to the existing building. So the decision was made that we wanted to have some kind of a small separation between the existing building and the new. And that shows up in this space right here. There's about an 8-foot separation. And the floor plan, it's always been with the existing building, what space is best fit into the floor plan that's existing. It's a rather small space, 50 by 70 feet. And the upper level has no structure that's holding up the roof, so we're able to open that space up. But the main level, the corridors are actually load bearing. They're carrying the floor up above, so we needed to leave those in place. So those 15-foot wide spaces were too small for certain functions. So what we decided, the best way to do this is to have the court on the second level in the back, and then the county service functions, recorder, auditor, deputy auditor, assessor, and treasurer in that new addition as well. But to maintain the existing existing entry from the north. So what we're using the existing building for on the main level is planning and zoning, break room, economic development, and DA. And then the Board of Supervisors occupy the second level. And also emergency management has some space in one of the wings. And,
That also includes demolition of the 2 new wings.
yes, we're taking out the 1926 edition and also the later edition that wraps around the back side. And we looked at maintaining those, but as a single-story addition, they really got in the way of what we were trying to do. And what we wanted to keep definitely was the original temple form of the building. And those additions actually detract from that in the scheme that we put together. Do you want to talk about the courts a little bit?
Did you talk about all the major destination points are right here? You've got those located,
Right.
so that the public can come in and everything is right here. It's a pretty direct, easy wayfinding for people to get to where they want to go. But the nice thing, I'll repeat this, but the nice thing about this scheme is that there's this 8-foot spline right behind the building, and it's just glass. So you're separating it with glass. There's no walls coming up and touching the building. And on the second level, basically this is just open with glass. The second level, there's a 12-foot bridge that comes out through the building that bridges across to the courts. So when you're in the courts corridor, you're looking back and you're seeing the brick, the windows, you know, you can see the roof line. So you're really experiencing the building by doing this. Basically, it's the same diagram as we have over here. We've worked with the court administrator. We combine some spaces and move things around, but basically, you get the judge's circulation here. If an attorney wants to come up and meet with a judge, we added this corridor. Prisoner circulation, public circulation. So it's basically very similar diagram on all the plans.
Our connection here is underground to the
Underground. And judges would come in here, come over and come up.
What is underground, I beg your pardon?
There's going to be, well, it could be above ground, but it would be obtrusive. But we need to get prisoners over to the building. There's 3 ways to do it: underground, above grade corridor that's secure, or you can continue to walk them across and bring them in this entrance and over to the elevator up to the holding. There's three options.
Is that a big problem to walk them across?
I think it is, is there anybody here that can talk to you?
Yeah, they're totally vulnerable. Anybody wants to do any harm to them or try to get them loose. There's no security at all.
Just whoever accompanies them would be the only security.
Well, yeah.
And there's not a real sense of dignity for a defendant who hasn't been found guilty yet to be marched across.
Any officer that escorts inmates has his turn chasing across the country.
Most
Sometimes they
courthouses,
catch them, sometimes.
They're all totally separate.
there are comments in the jail.
Most courthouses are not this close. If they're not this close to a jail,
They could be in.
they have a sally port, which is a garage that you drive the vehicle in, the police vehicle in, and then they go escort them over to the elevator. Now, we've got a sally port 30, 40 feet away from this building. That tunnel could go from that sally port over. Okay, I don't know if you ever bring people or defendants in from other locations, but that's a possibility.
So there's also an elevator from the tunnel to...
If a tunnel is used.
So you have 3 elevators.
3 elevators with a tunnel, 2 elevators with the other 2 schemes.
The other thing, and I know I've been hearing about this out in the public, is, we talk about flexibility in the future, and there is talk of the combining of the auditorium and court.
Well,
And so the way you've got it, I'm just thinking about flexibility. in the
well,
future.
actually, these walls were all dotted in because they work together. A lot of these.
Well, I understand how they work.
And so
yeah.
this may just be one big open space that grows as you know, as the departments change.
Yeah, one department gets a little smaller, another one gets a little larger, it might be a matter of just moving some lightweight walls to
Well,
accommodate.
if you're in Trent County government, we could have a business manager and take care of all the, you know.
There is going to be a lot, I mean, this is the beginning. We've got to really fine tune this, even the program. We have met with, well, you've talked about that, but we've met with everybody, and they basically acknowledged that where we're at is a good point at this point in time.
You know, I wish, I'm on the hospital board of trustees right now, and we're doing some strategic planning, and it just struck me today, you know, before we ever started this, that should have happened, you know. There should have been strategic planning.
Oh, there was.
The county, no.
Oh, for the county.
No, not on your part, before you ever came on the scene, you know. There should have been strategic planning.
How did you conduct the need assessments? Could you explain that?
Don did most of the county, I sat in on a few of those, but as far as the courts go, we sat down and met with Scott, court administrator, but then he insisted, and he came with us, we met with every staff member, and we went through and measured their desks, measured their filing. We know exactly how many carrels or, you know, these are 7-high shelf type units, and they needed 38. We've got 44 shown here, so there's enough for expansion. We went through all their needs and analyzed what they had, and we found that their department, at least the clerks, had more space than they really needed. There were other areas that were very small. The magistrate courtroom, it doesn't hardly function right now. That's really the worst. And the main courtroom is about the size that the magistrate courtroom should be. So that one is not accessible. There's a lot of problems, but they were using it for many, many years the way it was.
How were the other needs assessments
For
done?
the other departments?
Yes.
We had an opportunity to sit down for an entire day and go through each of the departments and talk to the people in each group. We asked them about what they're currently doing, if there were any issues or any inefficiencies or any inflexibilities. We also asked them if they could have something to improve their operations, what would it be? You know, are they reducing paper or are they adding more paper? Do they have enough storage or do they need more storage? We went through quite a lengthy discussion with each group. And then also today, a number of them came back in to kind of verify that some of the space needs that we identified were indeed being represented on the plan. And it was sufficient for what they were looking for. The next step will be to take it one step farther after we have established direction on these plans to say, okay, what kind of power needs do you need? What kind of telecommunication needs do you need? And lighting needs? And we'll go through that next layer. But right now we're at this point.
I can add that as far as the courts go, they've looked at this several times. And every time they look at it, they rethink how they want to do their business, or they realize, hey, we don't really need this. They're trying to get it to the bare minimum. And where we're at today is they only need 751 square feet more than what they have right now in the courthouse, which I think is very, very reasonable. And if the spaces are put together better, it's going to function just a day in life in terms of the way they do business.
Okay, Don, you want to come and talk about that? Concept C?
Well, for Concept C, we had a couple of opportunities to explore. The basic difference between the two is... Oh, sorry. Sorry about that. The basic difference here is that this is a 2-story scheme, and this is a 1-story scheme, where they have basements underneath. So you'll see the basement layout is under this portion here. So in the 2-story space, what we tried to focus on was the ability to have the courts on the upper level, similar to the plans you've seen on the other diagrams, the same court setup. I'm sorry, this is the second floor plan. And then also we wanted to focus on having a direct link from both directions, both from this side of the building and from the parking lot. We wanted to keep it in close proximity to the jail, but we have to hold it a certain distance apart. And that would be so we don't have to do a lot of fire rating to the existing buildings. And so when you come into the existing building, we have a generous lobby that again directs you back into a central area where you have direct access into the assessor, the auditor, the recorder, and the treasurer, all back in a corridor off of the main path. And you'll see additional seating areas out here so that as people are waiting, they don't necessarily have to wait at the counter or beside. They have room to wait out in the corridor, but not out in the main public corridor. Then on this side, we have the supervisor's office and the boardroom, so that at times when there's evening hours and things, this side can be, shut off. So then, as we go upstairs, with our vertical circulation on each end here, and an elevator in the center, you get up to an atrium area where you can look down below, lets natural light in from above, and also it brings in the opportunity for circulation out here before they come into the main courtrooms. And again, as we said before, we have the secure situation in the back, the private stair in the back here, and our central core for the prisoners. And this would be the basement level here. So you'll see that it's just a portion of what we have. As you look at the one story, we took the idea of the courts being closest to the jail, again with that central corridor theme connecting both the front street and the parking lot in the back. The one difference between the parking lots is we pushed the building farther north to add more parking in the back. And on this scheme, we kept it about the same location, and we simply added off-street parking coming into the south side of this parking lot. So that kept the Veterans Memorial where it is in place up front. So on this particular scheme, with the concept we had of coming in that main central corridor again, we break off into the secondary corridor, which then is all the public side, and this side is all the courtroom side. We have our secure entrances for the court area, and then once you come back here, we have direct access for the auditor, the assessor, the recorder, the treasurer here, and the supervisor and boardroom down here. We put the elevator down here to get to the basement with our 2 circulation stairs. So the basement, which is under this area, then contains the remainder of the other offices. It also contains all the voting machines and things like that. Oh, sure. As you can imagine, a 2-story scheme is going to have a higher elevation. So as you look at what we have for the south elevation, we tried to pick up some of the historical character of what you have currently. We also were trying to respect the existing jail, but the predominance of bringing it up in elevation with a 2-story gives us a greater height out there. On the 1-story, we wanted to also emphasize the entry, same as we were doing on the other scheme. And we, again, tried to pick up some of that historical character.
Any questions on the new building? Okay, you can see there's a lot of variation in the different exterior designs of the building. We tried to use some of the same kind of language of the existing buildings, the courthouse and the jail, and all the options. Same color brick, kind of the colonial columns and things like that. Window proportions and scale. So it kind of harmonizes, but there are a lot of different things you could do. And you could make something that looked very contemporary if you wanted to. That's not the message that we've heard during our meetings, though. So from tonight, our next meeting is on the 14th. We're going to be coming back with cost estimates for each of these options. But one of the things we need to do is get your thoughts and some direction from the advisory committee on the new option. Do we want to do a 1-story building or a 2-story building? And we can just ask people, we can just ask everybody what you think, or we can allow people to put a dot on, like we did in the previous meeting, on whether they want us to study and cost out a 1-story or a 2-story. So, what's everybody think?
Well, I think that's the whole idea is cost, you know. What's it cost for one, what's it cost for two? You know, as far as that cupola on top of a new, that doesn't remind me at all of any historic significance, you know. No.
Now, that's your existing building.
No, over there, that new.
Yeah.
So the idea was maybe it could be reused.
Yeah.
But you know, whether you go with a 1-story or a 2-story, there is a difference in cost. As you can see, there's more wall space in one, there's more roof space in another, more elevators in a 2-story, and more stairs. So
how do those compare in cost, you know, compared to stretching something way out and having it on 1 story?
it usually depends on the roof and the wall materials. So if you got more wall materials, for example, if you look at the 2-story option, say, okay, well, there's more wall here, but there's less roof. If we wanted to do, you know, a really nice roof, it costs more. If we do that here, there's twice as much roof. So you double the roofing cost, but then the wall cost goes down. So it's kind of a balance based on what those materials are. The elevators are costly. You're probably going to spend in the range of $60,000 to $80,000 for an elevator. So it also depends on the capacity of the soil. You know, what is the bearing capacity? So there's a lot of variables. We don't have that cost information now.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, if you go with more elevators, you're actually going to have more cost, but you're going to have more ongoing costs because each elevator has to be inspected on a monthly later. Plus, you have the state coming in every year. There's an extra cost for them just to go right up and down and say it's okay.
Yeah, that's very true. Elevator inspectors, so ongoing maintenance costs plus the inspection cost.
And then if they break down, you've got pretty expensive costs.
Yes, that's true.
We've experienced that.
Yes.
I had a specific question about the prisoners area. Are those holding cells in the courtroom?
Holding cells in the courtroom.
Right,
Between the courtrooms.
between the courtrooms.
They're not holding cells, what are they?
Yeah.
Now, there's a small interview.
Sure, over here.
Oh, okay.
When you come over here
Cells.
through the connection to the prisoners, this area right here is a holding cell that can hold one or a couple, and it has its own toilet facility.
In fact, every one has 2 of them.
Yes.
Even with the 1 story, you still need an elevator to go to the basement, is that correct?
Depending on what's in the basement. Yeah, if there are things in the basement that the public needs to access, for example, or heavy stuff that you're moving, like maybe voting machines that you don't want to carry up the steps, then yeah, that's true. And there was a question back there.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. On the utilities, what's the difference between the 1-story and the 2-story? Is there a great difference? Have you found in the past? If you have a 10,000 square foot building and you have a 2-story at 5,000 on each floor, or you have 10,000 all on 1 floor, what's the difference in the utilities? Very much, or?
Every building is different. You know, it really has to do with the windows, for example. Do we have big windows? You know, what's the level of insulation you put in? The new international energy codes that the state is adopting every 3 years are getting more and more strict every time. And it's more and more difficult to comply with every aspect of that. Probably 5% of buildings in Iowa comply, maybe less, maybe 2% of buildings in Iowa comply with the current energy codes.
What kind of shingles have you been using in the other projects?
All kinds.
On a recent courthouse that I was involved with, we used a recycled product that looked like slate. And
Is it 50-year life, or?
it did have a 50-year warranty on it. And the reason we used it was because we were trying to be more sustainable, but they already had layers of shingles on it, and they wanted to go back to a slate appearance, but you couldn't afford the slate. So we were able to find a reusable product.
We did that on a historic restoration project on a railroad depot too recently. Similar product. But there are lots of different products out there.
Is that the one in Cherokee?
No, it's in Dubuque.
The steel shingles, they look like regular shingles, and they have a long life.
So even the steel shingles that have the granules that look like asphalt?
I guess that my son put them on their house after a hailstorm, and they were told they had.
We've actually found in a couple of situations that had covenants that said you had to have asphalt on the shingles. They would not accept the metal shingles, even though they look like asphalt.
But there are a lot of options out there. We haven't really talked about what kind of shingle we're going to use. What we know is there's a goal that says we need to reduce your operating cost, but it's got to be a life cycle cost analysis. So the best deal for the longest life for this kind of building. Yes?
What about this glass on the, it gives you a picture of the glass bridge and so on. Is that environmentally practical? Doesn't that cost more in utilities?
Talking about the glass right here.
Yes, yes, yes.
Mhm.
Isn't that,
More glass means less insulated wall. So yeah.
But there are ways you can get around that by increasing the R value with argon-filled glazing and triple glazing.
Technologies have changed quite a bit in the last couple of years on windows, not just the glass, but more so it's the perimeter of the windows where you lose a lot of your heat or cooling. Questions? Yes?
I just have a concern versus one story versus two, in that if you have a one-story building, I mean, parking right now is at a premium. If you stretch out that building, you're going to lose parking, correct?
Yeah, that's true.
How about trees? Are you going to lose trees too?
Yeah, probably lose trees too. But if you look at the site plan, there are a lot fewer trees on this option than there are on this one. And
We added parking on the north as well.
we did add some parking there. So that's the viable concern.
You do lose possibility of future expansion too, because you could expand that two-story building
Yeah,
easier.
that's a good point. So, one story versus two, we can continue to talk about that. The energy efficiency, one story versus two, we've got whatever we're doing, we've got a high roof on it, so there's a lot of volume there. So if you think about the amount of volume you create with a sloped roof on that one story, it's more than double of what you're creating on the two story, because it's continuous, and we're looking at a hip type roof, so you're picking up the volume in the middle too. There's a lot of attic volume. We're probably insulating now at the floor of the attic, but still, you got that volume. The volume of the building itself is the same. There's more exterior wall on the two-story, and there's more roof on the one-story. You hear a lot of times people say, well, heat rises. That's true. But if you insulate like we are going to insulate to comply with the code, that's actually less of an issue. So energy efficiency is not as much about one story versus two like it was maybe 30 years ago. Okay. I think the decision is probably more about the prominence of the building, the cost of elevators. We're going to have one no matter what, because we do have to get to the basement. We got to be able to provide access. You can't be asking people to lug heavy stuff down there. If we're going to use a basement for storage, then you need to have an elevator that goes down to the basement. Yes?
You also need a place to go in case of a storm.
Yeah, we talked about that this morning and this afternoon again, that the storm shelter for the courthouse was kind of critical too. So we may not have a basement under the entire thing, but basement's cheap space to build. You already got the wall going halfway down. We do need space for mechanical. We haven't identified all that, so our thought is there's probably going to be a basement for storage and mechanical spaces. That's what you see in this plan. Storage, maintenance, mechanical, electrical, motor training, things like that. Yes?
Okay, on new versus renovation, can you give in a renovation the standard for heating and cooling efficiency?
It depends on the level of renovation. It depends on a lot of issues. For example, historic windows. There are really, really good historic windows and not so good historic windows. And most old windows just aren't up to the task that they were built for. They're 100 years old. Some new windows you buy aren't as great as they should be either, but if you get a much better possibility to have good windows, that's a big part of it. We're dealing with a solid masonry wall on the existing building. We can fur those out, put insulation on the wall, but it'll take a lot of insulation to comply with the energy codes. If we use uniform code for building conservation, we can get variances on complying with those codes. If we're working with some type of grant funding, as we've heard a lot of comments about funding that might be available for the existing building, then we get variances. But what that means is the energy cost is going to be higher in an older building. You have to spend a lot of money to bring them up to the current codes. But we'll factor all that in, because that'll be the goal. Make them as efficient as possible to comply with our goals for success.
Well, I guess regardless, something that the board of supervisors, when, after the vote, they said that they would look at the building as it stood, the cost of renovation versus new, and I guess none of these are going to give us that cost.
We'll be pricing out the concepts as you see them.
Yeah, because, you're taking the wings off, so there's demolition on that. And
Yeah, we'll be removing the wings on both the F option and the A option. They're at different floor levels. It just creates a lot of issues, a lot of problems. So we're going to go ahead and vote, and we're going to hand out dots. And what we're doing is we got to decide on this option what we're going to pursue: 1-story or 2-story.
So
You had a question?
you're asking us to choose between 1 and 2 on 10.
Yeah, we are definitely proceeding with F, and we're definitely proceeding with A. And we're going to develop costing for those. But on 10, we need to decide on this option, is it a 1-story or a 2-story? And you have a question.
Have the members of the planning committee expressed any preferences to you about 1-story or 2-story? Have they expressed any preferences about location, nearer or farther from the jail, parking, maintaining the Veterans Memorial, which some of these eliminate? Have any of the 5 of them expressed any opinions to you at all?
they want new.
They haven't told us what they want to do. They've asked us to evaluate these options and work through the advisory committee. So we've heard from them very early on that there was a Veterans Memorial, I recall that would be nice to be able to keep that if we can. But if we can't keep it in its location, to find an appropriate location for it. Some of these options keep it where it's at. Okay, Don, you want to go ahead and pass out those dots, please?
One thing that didn't cover one, did you talk about the Sally Port requirement, the crossing of circulation in the 1-story scheme?
I did.
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
You go ahead.
Okay.
You're the expert on the front side.
And I don't even need this. Okay. There's just one comment. We can't, if you're weighing the schemes as being equal, this one, the 1-story, could not be considered equal to the other ones. Only because it's compromised at this location. We're bringing prisoners right through the judge's circulation. So there'll have to be a Sally Port set up so when the sheriff's coming through, the other doors are locked. And and then it'll be opened up when the judges will have free access. So that's the only compromise of this scheme, I think.
So, go ahead and just put your dots right on these 2 floor plans.
We're gonna do 10.
Yeah, we're just doing 10.
Just those.
Yep, we're just doing 10.
Just one quick question. I'm not real wild and excited about window. It seems as if there's something lacking in the general appearance of any one of those buildings in terms of it's full of windows, and I don't see
Looks like a school.
something, I don't know.
This is not, none of these are going to be fine.
Right.
This is just the beginning.
Okay, yeah, no, I understand that, and with that, there is some sort of ornate trim stuff on some of the roof on the existing to get away from some of that boxy sort of look as this appears.
Yeah, I mean, this is probably the only concept that's got the existing elevation as it is right now, right here. So you can kind of see what's going on.
Yeah.
You know, I look
And
at,
we're stuck with the red because of the,
Yeah.
at least,
On the concept where you want to match the,
yeah,
I mean, no matter what, the jail's going to be there, it'd be nice to match that.
yeah, and then you have the jail, and so you're kind of into red, which isn't my cup of tea, which,
You don't like red brick?
no, and I've looked at some of the stuff you guys have done, and it's all really nice. The library here in town is nice, but none of it is red brick.
that 2F, I mean, that concept looks so lopsided in that whole square, you know, to have, to me, you're gonna have, it's just, yeah. Yeah.
But all this is advisory, right?
Correct.
So,
But the one you pick here is the one that we're going to study and develop costs for.
For a new
The
one.
two-story or the one
Two-story
story?
or
or
the one story.
So right now, we should decide on 2-story, 1-story if it's new.
but then what if, then it goes to the planning committee? It's unclear to me. You'll develop costs
And then we have
for
another
only
meeting.
one of them, but what if the
No, we
planning?
will
No.
develop,
3.
we'll develop costs for one of these, but we will develop costs for this, and this, and that. And we'll bring those costs back at our next meeting on March 14th, and then we will ask people on the advisory committee to vote for their preference. And then we will go and we'll have 3 meetings in Riceville and Stacyville and St. Ansgar, and we'll basically go through this process and show any of the folks who haven't been able to participate in this because it's too far away or they weren't able to. Yes, sir.
I would like to say that, like what Mary says, last night at the meeting, there was considerable discussion on F.
Yeah.
And none of us really cared for it, but we want to use that concept to just see what kind of a cost figure we come up with.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah.
it was voted second, and we went through this process. So it became clear that that is something that we needed to look at. And part of the challenge is obviously, well, you know what the challenge is. We built it between 2 existing buildings. But we're going to be proceeding with that one. We just need to know tonight, is it a 1-story or a 2-story option?
Do you have the dates for those meetings in Riceville? And
We haven't scheduled those yet.
when will you be doing that? You won't schedule them until after the 14th or
We'll probably schedule them next week.
next week?
I would suggest that you delay them as much as you feel you can delay them, because I don't know how happy everybody's going to become the 14th, you know.
Why is that?
Well, I may look at that and say, well, I want to sit and ponder this for a while.
Oh, well, we're not going to those communities to ask for a vote. We're going to those communities to tell them what's going on.
Okay, so you're still not, it's still not a 1, 2, or 3, a choice. It's
The
still going to
advisory
be-
committee is going to vote on their preference on the 14th.
And
And that's
Okay.
what you'll be taking to the communities, right?
Yeah,
the preference, 1.
Of the 3.
we'll take them the entire process. we'll explain the entire process to them, and we'll tell them the outcome of the advisory committee's desires and vote.
So they will not have an opportunity to say, the advisory committee was a bunch of jerks. We like
They
this
can
one
say
better.
whatever they want. I'm sure they will say whatever they want.
Regardless, somebody will be on.
I'm just trying to understand where,
I don't, so no one will be voting in those meetings?
No.
You will present what it is you are giving to the planning committee.
We'll present the entire process and the outcome of the process that we will be giving to the planning committee. That's correct.
And the outcome will be one of these three choices?
Yes.
Or will it be the three options?
It'll be whatever you vote.
It'll be one of the three then?
On the 14th.
Yes,
On the
it'll be,
14th.
yeah.
Okay.
It'll be the entire process, and we'll show what the vote was.
Kevin, just a quick question. What happens of the three? Two of them have the same number, and it's not a clear discussion. How long does it?
Then we give that to the planning committee.
Okay.
It's not up to us to make that decision. We're gathering the information, and we're providing that to the planning committee.
And will the planning committee's decision come after these three meetings? The meeting in Riceville, the meeting in St. Anne's,
I hope so.
but
That's the
not
intent.
before?
That's the intent.
Well, that's what they'll be given, right?
Right.
That'll be.
We're going to
our
get feedback and
recommendation.
input at those three meetings from those communities. Hopefully, we get additional people to make those comments. Okay, so go ahead and make your votes. What you want us to say for the.